Let me hear the story about you seeing a live pterosaur. Let me share
I
those
grew up
pics.
in DeSoto, Texas. It's a suburb of Dallas. Like literally the northern boundary is Dallas, right? So it was summer of 92, June, like 10:30, 11 a.m. We'd been fishing in the 10-mile creek. Main details are a lot of North Texas sits on this giant limestone bed, right?
Mhm.
So a lot of the bigger creeks are cut into that limestone bedrock. And the way, again, the creeks are where the trees are because the trees are where the water is. And so I call it the green wall, right? We've sort of curated our entire society around here where it's like, okay, well, it floods here, so we want to make certain there's plenty of, we don't want to build the houses here. Well, essentially, we end up mowing right up to this wall. And so where the tree line is, that's where the brush is. So you can't see into these things. But so these creeks are often very, very deep, like 15, 20 feet deep, and you don't even know they're there unless you're aware. Well, a few places, the walls will actually collapse in on these creeks and you can get in there and fish. And it was a great place to grow up. So we're fishing and we've wrapped up for the day. We're getting ready to go in. And my friend's already gone up the embankment and he's in the tree line and he's sort of going up the hill. And I've just hit the tree line and I hear a noise and I've never heard it before. It sounded like the closest thing I can describe it to is sounding like an ugly crow. And I'm like, what the heck is that? And it was loud. It was loud. And I'm like, and it felt like it was coming towards my direction, right? So I poked my head out. Now, again, the rock formation sort of collapsed in on itself. So I'm up. I'm in an elevated position where the tree line is because this thing's like 15, 20 feet deep. So I poke my head out and I see what I think, because again, it's a creek and I'm in sort of like the middle of this straightaway, right? It sort of snakes its way around, but I'm in the, like literally where we were is like the middle of this straightaway. So I poked my head out because I'm like, what the heck made that sound? And I see what I think is the biggest blue heron I've ever seen in my life. It's sort of shaped like a blue heron. It's the same color as a blue heron, right? They have that sort of Payne's gray. And it's coming at me, but I can tell because again, I'm in the creek. I know it's like, how wide it is. I'm like, this thing's like got an 8 to 10 foot wingspan. This thing's massive. So I'm watching it. And then it gets right in front of my face. Its right wingtip is 5 feet from my face. That's how close I am. And I realize it has no feathers.
Ooh.
And what I thought, because when cranes fly, they'll sometimes do their neck in like this S-curve shape thing, and they'll stick their legs out behind them. What I thought had been its legs sticking out behind it was a long flanged tail.
Really? Kind of like a...
Well, more like a diamond, like a rounded diamond.
Oh, okay.
And so it's like a long tail, and then it has this little flange at the end. And then that's when I realized what I'm looking at, and I just watch it, and then it just banks and goes away. Friend of mine comes back down and says, "Hey, are you coming or what?" And I'm like, "Did you just see that pterosaur that flew by?" And he's like, and he laughs and leaves. I don't even tell my dad. He would have believed me. I grew up going to the Creation Evidence Museum. He would have believed me. But I couldn't believe me because I live in DeSoto, Texas, a suburb of Dallas. I told myself it wasn't a pteranodon. Most people think pterosaur, they think pteranodon. Crest, beak, no tail. This was a rhamphorhactoid. No crest, reptilian, more lizard-like face, long tail with a flange on the end. And it's like, I couldn't believe that I saw it. Here's where things get bad. The next year, The Mysterious Origins of Man come out, and this is the first time I run across David Hatcher Childress, and he's talking about how there was about all the pterosaur sightings seen in the Rio Grande Valley and then the flap in Brownsville in the 70s. Now, you would think at that point you'd be like, well, Jason, sorry, throat's a little scratchy. You'd think, Jason, you saw pterosaur, they're seeing pterosaurs. maybe there's a connection. But I would say, no, Texas is really friggin' big. If they're down in Brownsville in the Rio Grande Valley, they're not flying all the way up to Dallas, Texas. So I didn't
It's
believe
another
myself.
part of the country, basically.
Yeah, it is. Like people do not understand how big Texas is.
It's 3 states away.
Yeah. So I didn't believe myself for years because I couldn't. Because it's like, well, other people would have to have seen these things, and I've never heard anybody talk about them. Okay. I'm going to flash ahead, and this is the most embarrassing part. I literally wrote a little booklet called Wyvern where I use art history. Because again, artist, right? I was going to be an archaeologist, kind of saw that wasn't going to work out because I wasn't going to be able to do what I wanted to do. But I was also going to combine a lot of my artistic skills into it because a lot of archaeologists don't understand how art actually works on a mechanical level, right? So they misinterpret a lot of stuff. Well, I kind of saw where that was going. It's like, oh, you find the wrong thing, you're going to become a florist. I don't want to find the wrong thing. So I go and do my life, but I wrote a little booklet called Wyvern where I use art history to show that rhamphoractoid pterosaurs have to have lived up until at least very, very recently. Because I can show how the wyvern, right, is clearly an interpretation of a rhamphoractoid pterosaur looking at artwork made from several hundred years ago. What we consider the dragon's tail or the devil's tail with the little diamond on it, that doesn't enter into any artwork until the 15th century. And that's important because in the 1400s, a French farmer killed a little small dragon, and it was put on display in Paris for about 100 years. The end of its run, now the end of its run, there are 3 artists who over a 20-year period draw what they see. Now here's the thing. What they saw was clearly a gaff. A gaff is like a jackalope, right? It's a taxidermied thing.
Yeah.
Right? It's not real.
Swamp monkey.
Exactly. But here's the key element here. They had no way of preserving this thing. So when the original dragon goes on display, it decays and goes away. So they put up a replica. This is my working theory, and here's why. When you look at the details, it has a tooth coming out of its snout. It has 3 claws on the wing. And has a long tail and 1 set of legs. That's a freaking rhamphoractoid pterosaur. These are the 3 elements. The rhamphoractoids, the name rhamphorhynchus means tooth-beaked. It's named because at the end of its snout, it has a tooth that comes out of its nose, literally. And there are drawings of wyverns and replicas of wyverns from that time frame and even later that show a tooth coming out of its nose. It was very common at the time. And again, pterosaurs, 3 fingers on the wing, long tail. This was a rhamphoractoid pterosaur. And here's the key point about that flange on the end of the tail, right? It enters into heraldic art at that point. Before that point, nobody rendered dragons as having what we would consider a dragon's tail. They just had a normal snake's-like tail, right? It is at this point when that thing goes on display that people are like, oh, that's what a dragon's tail is supposed to look like. And so they start adding that triangular flange onto it. That's 4 points of detail that could only combine if someone saw a rhamphoractoid pterosaur. So I'm writing a book, or a little booklet, showing that art history tells us these things have been around the entire time.